Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Dennis. I'm from Germany, as already written in the chat. I'm working for a German agency called SinnerSchrader, and in the last half a year, we've been working a lot with AWS services. We basically created a whole microservice architecture in AWS, and I was asked to show a bit about it in the stream. So we'll start or go ahead with a rather simple yet still touching a lot of services in AWS. So yeah, it's a simple example. Um, Also, it might not be how you would do it in real life because some things can be done differently, but I wanted to show as many different components in AWS as possible. So that's why I chose this pathway, but we'll get along with it. So first of all, a brief overview of what we're going to show. We'll see. I'll showcase a bit of I'll showcase a bit of Elastic Beanstalk, which is basically something like a managed virtual server solution. Just give me a second, I'll do some quick adjustments. Give me a second, please. And I need to adjust something. And I guess this is too big. So let's make it smaller. Okay, there we go. So yeah, Elastic Beanstalk is basically something like a managed solution for running your application, for example, PHP, in the AWS cloud. What you can do is you can pick different like pre-configured packages like PHP, Node.js, Python, whatever. There's also Docker or multi-container Docker if you want to run your own stack there and can't pick something that you would like to have from here. Yeah, then I will give you a brief overview of DynamoDB, which is AWS's version of NoSQL storage. There's also some message queuing system that I'm going to show called SQS, Simple Queuing Service, which is something like a simple message queue like RabbitMQ. And finally, I'm going to show some Lambda Function, which is a true serverless system for running your code in the cloud. But we'll start very small with the Beanstalk stack and the simple application. So the example is I'd like to show a very simple pizza ordering sort of service. Nothing fancy, just a simple example. And to start with it, I created a simple Falcon application. For those who don't know it, I will just write it in the chat later. It's basically MVC framework for PHP completely written in C or compiled to C code. So it's basically a PHP extension, which is not the focus of this show tonight, but still I'll give you a brief overview. So basically you just have your usual index PHP, you just bootstrap the application, you just have it here. Yeah, you handle it, get content, you have controllers, you have some config files here. Nothing spectacular, but it's very fast. So have a look at Falcon if you don't know it yet. So what we want to go to start with is to get this running in the AWS cloud. So for that we need Beanstalk. And as a prerequisite, you need two things, which is one, the AWS command CLI, which is some nice tools that you can have on the CLI, like AWS help. And you get some nice description, some services that you have. And then there's also the Elastic Beanstalk CLI, which is sitting on top of this AWS CLI, which helps you bootstrap and manage your Beanstalk application. I'll just show you how it works. So we'll start with the simple ebinit in the project folder. So I'm in my project folder right now. Like you see, root folder. So I start with ebinit to give him some basic information about what I'm going to do with it. So let's start with the region. That's basically where it will be hosted. So let's go with Ireland. Yeah, application name, let's just call it pizza. You can just pick whatever you want. Yeah, so we need a platform, which is obviously PHP. Platform version, there's PHP 7.0. I hope they will come up with 7.1 at some point. Yeah, this is this interesting question. Although this is all managed, you can still get SSH access to this machine if you want. So for test or dev environments, to debug some stuff, this can be handy, but we will not need it today. But still very handy. And that's basically it. Now everything is set up. He knows that I want to deploy this application to a Beanstalk environment, but we need to set up this environment first because this was only client-side settings. So next step would be eb create to create an empty application stack on Beanstalk. So yeah, let's call it pizza dev. That's fine. That's something that the load balancer will be configured with, so we can call this application in the browser. This is a difference when it comes to how how extensive you want to configure the load balancer. For this example, we will go for classic, but with application you have a bit more variations and you can configure it a bit more. But for our example, one is more than enough. So what now happens is he will create an EC2 instance. EC2 stands for Elastic Cloud Compute, which is basically AWS's naming for virtual server. We can have a look at it here already if we want. So there should be something going on here already. So you see he created an application called Pizza, and inside he created an environment called Pizza Dev, and right now it's gray because it's in an undefined state or it's still bootstrapping it. And now you can follow the events that are going on here, but you can also have a look at this in the console. It's basically the same as you can see. Now this takes a while. Well, actually it should take longer than 2 to 3 minutes. So let's just wait for this to finish. Small spoiler, I will call this URL as soon as the environment is healthy, and it will not work, and I'll explain you why in a second when I showed it to you, which has something to do with the Falcon framework, but you'll see. You can see here that he created an .elasticbeanstalk folder, which should not be under version control because this config YAML is only for your personal setup. You can see that you can, for example, say like the branch default is branch in terms of Git branch default is that I want to deploy to pizza dev environment. I can have global configuration here. I can have different profiles if I want. I can have the platform here. Oh yeah, exactly, in the chat. So if you have any questions, I can try to answer them. So let's have a look here back. Yeah, you see there's a lot of magic happening here right now. You don't have to understand all of it because it's all working for you already. He's creating a load balancer. He's attaching the virtual server to it. He's creating some CloudWatch alarms, which is basically some monitoring. Yeah, he's also taking care of some permission stuff, not all of it. I'll show this later. Yeah. So as I said, this takes like 2 to 3 minutes, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. Okay, so he says he's finished. Let's give him a bit more time. So what this did is not only spawn the server, but if I scroll up here, you can also see that he created a version archive, which means that he basically zipped the whole application that I have and stored it on S3, which is Amazon's or AWS's glorified FTP if you want. It's basically, you can talk to it via HTTP protocol if you want. And that's where he stored the artifact, and then after the machine was there, he put the whole file or the whole structure on the server. So he says that he's finished, so let's have a look at it. Yeah, it looks cool. So I will now call this, and it will not work, as I said. So yeah, forbidden. So this basically means that I have no access to it, and that's because my index.php is in public folder, but by default Beanstalk thinks that it's in the project root. So let's go to the dashboard configuration. And this is where you can configure the whole stack that you spawned with EB deploy or EB create. And let's go to software configuration, and there's the document root. And what we want is slash public. And this will now roll out this change if I click on apply. And this will again take some time, but it should be faster than the initial deployment. He's basically just changing the Apache 2 configuration to change the document root. You can also change the whole Apache configuration. Yeah, by the way, he's using Apache, not Nginx, which is unfortunately not an option for PHP. I'd love to use Nginx, but it's not possible right now. I hope they will change this. You can choose between Apache and Nginx if you pick a Node.js application for Beanstalk instead. Yeah, let's check. Okay, so he's still trying to deploy the change. Yeah, sometimes it takes a bit longer. So basically, in the meantime, I can show you the stuff that I have as a skeleton. I have an index section. I have a very simple view, which is like our pizza order form, which I will fill in the next couple of minutes. And then we'll try to store data in a DynamoDB and at some point trigger the Lambda. Okay, let's check. Yeah, okay, this is what I wanted to see. So I get a 500 now, server error, and you don't see any error message here, obviously, because you don't want to expose this to the user. But we can have a look at the logs. So you just click on logs here. You can request the logs. Last 100 lines should be enough. I get a nifty small file here, and I can have a look. And now you can see here that there's a fatal error, which says that the factory default class wasn't found. And the reason is that the Falcon framework is a PHP extension, and PHP extensions need to be compiled, obviously, or installed at least. And Beanstalk comes with a set of extensions like Memcache, Redis, oh no, Redis not, Memcache, MySQL in different flavors, zip extension, like some of them, I can show them later, but unfortunately not the Falcon framework because it's still quite exotic, I would say. So what we need to do now is we need to, first of all, make under Elastic Beanstalk know how to compile this and install it. And we need to do this, we unfortunately also need to change the instance type. So there's 2 steps we need to do so now. First step is download the configuration from Beanstalk, adjust it and upload it again. And then we can compile the Falcon framework. So let's check. There's a command for this. Oh yeah. Yeah, I want to list, I will not list them, I want to save it because right now there is none saved. It's just using his default configuration. So ebconfig save. He will just call it something. I'll just store it like this. Okay, it's saved now. And then you see that there's another saved configs folder here, which you can put under version control if you want. And this is what he created by default. You can see that there's some load balancer stuff, environment. You don't need to take care of all of this right now, understand everything of it. This is, by the way, the setting that we did through the web interface. You can also set this into configuration here. So again, we need to change the instance type, which has a very stupid reason. The thing is that the Falcon framework is too big to compile on a micro machine. It needs a small instance at least because of memory issues otherwise. So let's just change this to small, which should be enough for us. This will not tell us that there's no config yet. Oh, there actually is, okay. I'll just put the config I just changed. And on the web interface, I should now be able to see the saved configurations. Actually, I don't see them, which is weird. Oops. Oh, there should be something. Ah, there we go. Okay, took a while. So this is the configuration we saved and changed now, and we basically just load it into our created environment. And as I said, what this does is it now changes the instance type from micro to small. And actually what he does is, I can show this to you. In the background, he's now spawning a new machine. It should show up here at some point. This is the current one, and you can see that it's a micro instance. And he should come up with a different one in a second or two. Let's just go here at the same time. Oh yeah, he created the auto-scaling launch configuration. So you can configure things like auto-scaling, which means that if the load goes too high, he will automatically spawn a new instance, and if it's going below a threshold, he will reduce the amount of instances again. Actually, Beanstalk is also nice for production environments. We use it in production environment, but it's also very handy for dev environments. So let's see if he's doing something here already. Okay, there we go. So now you see that there's a new instance type here, which is the small one that we requested, and this will again take some minutes to spawn it, but it will have a bit more power. There's a question in the chat saying, asking if AWS EB is hosting. Sort of. What you do is you put the whole application into the cloud, basically. So if you are familiar with Google Cloud, it's similar, or Microsoft Azure, it's also the same. And Beanstalk is managed hosting, but you still have full control over the machine if you want. So you can configure everything, most stuff on it. You can get SSH access to it and do whatever you want with it. But you usually don't want this if you're using Elastic Beanstalk. Or if you want to do it, you should not use Beanstalk, because Beanstalk is meant to manage most of the stuff for you. It's meant to take care of automatic updates for you. It can install patch level versions of like security updates or anything for you. You can even tell him when to do this. So that's what's the good thing about Beanstalk. Hope that answers the question. Can close this one now. Okay, you can see that it's degraded now because he didn't finish it yet. Health is failing or not available. So there's also health monitoring here, so you can tell him to warn you when instances are broken. You can also do things like rolling updates. So if you deploy an application update, he will spawn a new instance, deploy the application there, run the health checks, and only if they are green, so there's 200 OK or whatever you want to check, then he will change the remaining servers to the new application version. So yeah, sometimes you need to be a bit patient with this, but you get used to it. And usually you don't do these changes to instance types too often. You usually do it like in the beginning when you try to figure things out, and at some point you just know what's going on. So in the meantime, I can show you what you have to do as the next step to get extensions to be compiled and run. There is some magic folder here, which is called stuff. And there's something called EB extensions. And I just copy this over to my application. You just drop it into the root folder of your application. And this is how you can configure extensions in Beanstalk. You can tell him to install anything you want. You could install Git if you want. You can, well, yeah, you can install Git. You can install anything that you like. It's basically a modified, well, not modified, it's an Amazon Linux it's called, but it's using the same tools as, I think, CentOS. So Yum as the package manager. But you can also do things like wget, some archive, compile it, and run it. How long have I been working with AWS? So I have experience for 4 years now, but my previous experience was on a very low level in terms of we just used virtual servers and deployed there with some Jenkins server. We didn't make extensive use of all the services that it has, like hosted or managed MySQL, NoSQL, or other services that they provide. So yeah, you can do things like run commands, you can create files, you can run other things if you want. You can also do things like test, so that these things are not run, this command is not run every time you do a deployment. So you'll check the file that we create here, you will check if it's existing here so that it doesn't run it again. So let's hope that he's finished. Yes, no, maybe. Yeah, he's still cleaning up the stuff, but it should be running again. Yeah, still 500 obviously because we only changed the instance type. And again, we did this because otherwise we cannot compile this because compiling the package is too big. But if you put the file here in .eb extension in the project root, and hopefully this is finally finished. Oh, degraded. Okay. Hopefully this will go to OK now in a matter of minutes. Sometimes this is a bit behind of what the actual health status is. You can check it here as well. Oh yeah, he's expected some version here, but that shouldn't be a problem. So let's just deploy, which is Elastic Beanstalk CLI command for deploying your application basically. It will take everything that you have in your folder, excuse me, and create the application archive and deploy it to the Beanstalk application. Hopefully this will also get rid of the degraded status here. Oh yeah, I see that he removed the old instance, which is good, because we don't want it. So now this deployment might take a bit longer because he now not only has to deploy the application itself, but you also will notice that the test here will fail because the file doesn't exist. So he will run this command, so he will download the Falcon application or extension, the code, and run it. And this is not the best approach basically because you usually don't want to run this every time you create a new instance. What you can also do is you can pre-compile this on a dedicated EC2 instance, store it on an S3 bucket, and then just copy it over from S3 to the server, which is much faster, and you maybe even get around this problem with the instance size. Sorry. Question, what is my favorite AWS service? That's a good one. I really like Beanstalk, but it also has its limitations sometimes. Some things are not that easy to configure, and the configuration that you see here is like a fraction of what you can have in the configuration. They can get huge. And it took me like 2 or 3 days to just figure out what load balancer we want to use in our application in the company, how to configure it, how to configure SSL certificates and everything. So that was a bit tricky. For this example, I played around with SQS, this queuing service, and it's awesome. It's so easy to set up. You don't need to take care of anything. You just press 2 buttons and you're good to go. You just store messages, you can read messages. The AWS SDK, which exists for PHP and Node and all the other major languages, is so great. It's very helpful. I can maybe can show you something. So for example, if you want to have an SQS service, then you do something like just an SQS client, you configure it, some array. I'll get back to this later, but then you have some send message, you can create queues for some management stuff, so send message. I think there's also get messages or receive or something, receive message, yeah. You can also see that there are some async methods here. The AWS SDK or AWS in general is completely set on HTTP protocol. And the SDK on PHP uses Guzzle as the HTTP client, which is awesome. I love Guzzle, it's very nice. So let's check. Okay, so he's still trying to run this. Okay, this looks good. So he should now have installed the Falcon extension, and we should hopefully see something. Okay, that's not what I expected, but maybe that's because I deployed this config folder here. Maybe. Let's just get rid of it. Not sure if this is the problem. Let's see. And now the subsequent deployments should be much faster. In the meantime, we can start with, oh shit, no, I did obviously a mistake because I I deployed some broken code, which is not nice, but he will tell me. So in the meantime, we can start with a very simple form here until we have the application running. So what we need is a simple form. Some URL helper from Vault, which is Falcon's template engine. It's very similar to Symfony's, how's it called again? Twig? Let's just come up with a new route here. Method should be post. Oops. Whatever. Some options for pizza. Let's just copy this one. Because who doesn't love greasy pizza? Let's deploy again just for good measure, because I broke it. Okay. I hope that this Volt thing will solve itself, hopefully. Okay, that's that. Oh yeah, we also need select, obviously, for all the options, otherwise it will not work. Oops. So there goes our select, and we need a submit button. Don't mind my puny HTML skills. I've been working on backends only for 7 years or now. I think I haven't touched HTML in a while. So, okay. So yeah, we had introduced a new route here, which is called place order. So we should maybe come up with it here as well. So that's my controller now. Place order action. Let's check if it's a post. I think it's this. Redirect to index. Okay. Okay, so this is weird. He's complaining about some Vault directory can't be written. Let's quickly check this, what this is, because I didn't have this in my, when I tested this out first. Yeah, this is another thing. I should have maybe attached my SSH key here, because I can't access it directly. You know what? I'll just destroy the stack again and create it again from scratch with the new changes. Hopefully it will work then. Or maybe the cache folder is... That may be the problem. He expects a cache folder with some stuff in it. Maybe you can create it, but if there's something inside, it will work. That could be a solution. Let's try this. If this doesn't work, I'll just create this from scratch. Okay. Okay, so now what we need to do next is we need to somehow talk to the services, like the DynamoDB. So before I create the code here, I will just quickly show it in the AWS infrastructure. Question was if I can run Node as well. Yes, you can. You can also run different versions of it. I can briefly show this to you. So if you create a new application, this is, I wanted to show you something different. Maybe here. You can also pick between web server or worker if you want to have a worker. And if I pick Node.js here, I think if I go to next, I can check it. Maybe I can't here. Anyways, you can pick different versions for Node.js if you want. So back to DynamoDB, which is the NoSQL database in a managed version. You can also download this, I think, for local tests, but for this example, we just do it here. So basically what you just do is you create a table, give it a name, give it some primary key, which is order ID in our case. We will not, I think it can be strings, okay. We will not create other fields. He will create them as soon as they are entered into the database, which is similar to how Elasticsearch works, where you can just create new fields on the go. We just go with the default settings and create, and that should be it. This will not take a second or two. Let's check back to our poor little Elastic Beanstalk stack, which is hopefully now working. It's also saying that this is not like, okay. So please, please, please. Shit, okay. So I will now destroy this and run it from scratch to hopefully make it work. Don't know why this is not working now. I'll just delete the application. And in the meantime, I will code, of course, so that we don't lose time. Really interesting why this doesn't work with the folder. It should work. Now it should become red at some point. Yeah, now you see that he is doing something. Weird behavior. Anyways, I created the DynamoDB table and it should be there now. Yeah, there it is. And you can see that he created the table called orders. There's a primary partition key, which is the order ID. Some default settings like that I can have 5 read capacity units per second, I think. Same for write. You can change this, of course. I think it also auto scales to a certain extent. And what we need to do now is we need to introduce some service that talks to this DynamoDB. So let's create some simple service here. Pizza service. And we will need a DynamoDB, which is a DynamoDB client. And let's pass it. So yeah, what we need to do is, or what we want to do is, we want to store something in the orders table. So let's call this function place order. And there's something called this DynamoDB put item, and it needs some args. So basically it expects some array structure. Let's be nasty and just catch everything here. So now the structure for DynamoDB might look a bit weird in the beginning, but it might make sense what they came up with. I'll just show it to you. So you need to specify various keys in the array. One is the table name, which is obvious. And this is called orders, the same way how we called it when setting it up. We also need to specify the item itself. And this is where it gets a bit weird. So you specify the fields, still all right. And then you do something like this. And now we figured out that we need an order ID. So this looks weird with this S, and yeah, it might look weird in the beginning, but this just tells the DynamoDB table or database that the field is of type string. There are different kinds of this. There's S for string, N for number, and I think there's also B for bool or something. You just have to tell them every time what kind it is. Let's quickly check at our Beanstalk if it's gone. Oh, he's still doing some stuff. Okay, let's continue here. Let's store some other fields. Let's store the session ID, for example. And now we just follow this pattern of telling him, whoops, that this is another string. And we probably want to store the pizza ID. Oops. Oh yeah, pizza is correct. Which is probably a number, because it's just an integer that we have in the form. And we also want to store the order status. Status. And let's just hard code it to open. So now we figured that we need some fields here. Sorry. So we need to introduce some order ID, and for that we need some data here. So let's just pass the session ID and the pizza ID. Let's just have some random value for the order ID. Let's take time into this as well. And to make it shorter, just make it smaller. Now we have an order ID, we should also have all the values. And technically this should store everything. Now we need to register the service, which is happening in my services PHP. And before that, I'll check. Okay, it's gone again. That's good. So let's quickly check the code. It should be all right. So let's try again to create the Beanstalk application. Yeah, create. So these are basically the same steps as we had before. This will probably again not work because he is complaining about the instance type. Ah, shit. Oh, we'll see. Might be that he will not be able to bootstrap the application because it's again default to micro, but let's just go ahead and continue with this stuff. So we have this service now here, which we need to register in our configuration. We basically just register shared service. This is now Falcon magic. Now we need our DynamoDB. And yeah. Like this. And there's some options that you have to set. And I think there's there's two mandatory configuration parameters that you have to set, which is region, I think. And you can get the strings for this from the documentation of AWS. We'll just quickly check the chat if there are some questions. Why should you use DynamoDB instead of MySQL? I wouldn't say that one or the other is better. So DynamoDB is obviously NoSQL. So if you have like a lot of documents that you want to store or just unstructured data, then you should probably go with DynamoDB or any other NoSQL database for that matter. You can obviously also just spawn some MongoDB on your own in AWS if you want, or whatever you like. It's fast, it has an HTTP interface. The AWS SDK is nice to talk to it. Yeah, that's basically it. So there's the region, and there's another parameter that we have to set in, which is version. So they have some sort of versioned API for their services. And we cannot just go for latest. I think this should work, but they say themselves that you should never use latest in production because it may break your application. They are versioned by date, I think. So let's quickly check this. Maybe we will find this. I think this is not it. Oh yeah, there you go. Maybe it says here as well. There should be some list somewhere. No, not here. Anyways, here you see that I could also now put this string here as the version, and there is some previous version here as well. So you could use that too. What is going on with our environment? I guess it will break still because it's now using a micro. Yeah. And I now cannot change it yet because he says that it's still transition. So let's wait for that. So yeah, we have our DynamoDB here now. We need to inject it here. And that should do the trick, in theory at least. We can also tie it together here. So we have our place order action here, which is called when we submit the form, hopefully. And let's get the pieces together. So I just basically get the service that I registered previously in the services PHP, like here. Oh, by the way, we need to return it. And now we need to place our order. Oh yeah, he doesn't know it yet because I didn't syntax highlight it. There we go. Okay, now in my session ID and some pizza ID that I came up with through the post. So let's just get the ID and the pizza ID, which is getting it from the request. No, request. Get post. You can also get query, I guess. Yeah. And it's called, I think, pizza ID. Let's check in our template. Yeah. Pizza ID. Yeah. And hopefully this is not null, because null means that it didn't work. And if it worked, then I'm going to do something. Like returning or redirecting to some success page, for example, with the order ID. So what's going on here? He'll now probably fail with compiling the framework again, unfortunately, but yeah, we'll see. So in the meantime, we can create this success action. So this is not the default routing behavior of Falcon. You just do controller, action, and then optional parameters here. So it will just map the order ID that I set to the URL to here. Just assign it to the view. And we need to create a view. Let's just copy it from here. And that's our very simple success page. This takes ages. So in the worst case is if Beanstalk doesn't work, I will try to make it run with Docker as a fallback, because you can also talk to some AWS services with your local machine. Depends on the service, obviously. But it should be possible because, well, maybe not for DynamoDB, we have to see, but it will work for For SQS maybe. Oh, we'll see. So yeah, now what we have put together now is our index action, which just shows some form. I have my place order action, which takes care of the post form so that I can store the pizza order in my DynamoDB. And in the success case, I'll redirect to the success page. And what we do here is we just put together the item with some parameters into the table orders and do as simple as put item. So as he's still doing, I will now go ahead with the fallback, which is Docker. So sorry for the inconvenience. Let's hope that this will work. So I have a very simple Docker setup, which is using pre-built Falcon PHP 7 image, and hopefully this will work. Yes, because I have other services running. So let's just restart Docker to kill them. That's what happens if you just close your CLI tab or your bash tabs before actually killing the applications. Basically, I'm just waiting that he figures out that he cannot compile it, so I can change the machine size. Then hopefully it will work. Okay, Docker should be restarted. Okay. Ah, interesting. Same issue here. So this is really strange. I didn't experience this in my local test that I did before. So let's just, for the sake of it, change it locally. Okay, now this is getting more and more interesting. Ah, he's expecting it in here. Maybe that was the problem. I thought it was in app. Hey, okay. Let's see if this does the trick. Yes, it does. Ah, okay, sorry for that. Let's just wait for him to finish it up, and hopefully I can then show it to you in Beanstalk. We can try to see if I'll get access to the DynamoDB from my local environment. Probably not, because he doesn't know the credentials. Oh yeah, SSH Docker alias, I can show it to you. It's basically nothing fancy, it's just helping me to, it's not even SSH in real, it's just helping me to get access into the Docker container. It is in wait, where was it? No, was it here? No, where did I put it? Well, basically, I can show to you what I do. It's a one-liner, basically. This is basically the command that you want to do. You just do docker exec -i-t, give him the container name or ID, and then what you want to execute, and then you're inside. So basically, if I do this, let's try this out. Oh yeah, I will not see it because I'm inside the machine already. So nope, this one. There we go. Yeah, there you go. So it's basically just docker exec, and $1 is the variable, which is the container name, and there you go. Yeah, I was in this container. That's why it didn't work. Okay, so it seems that he figured out that it doesn't work, which is good. I just need to wait until he stops trying it further so I can change the instance type. Yeah, it's quite handy, this thing. I would suggest that we make a short break now, like 5 minutes, because it's 1 hour over already. And in the meantime, I'll try to fix this Beanstalk stuff. So I'll be back at, yeah, like in 5 minutes, if that's okay for you. So see you in a minute. Okay, let's get back. Okay, so I managed to add the new instance with instance type small again. And hopefully when this is done, and I also have to change the Apache public root folder again, then it should hopefully work because of this missing cache folder that I forgot, I guess. It's usually created when you bootstrap the framework, but apparently I deleted it. So that is most likely the reason why he wasn't able to do anything, because apparently he's not able to create folders if they're not existing, or they don't check this folder and create it on demand. I think actually in our actual application, the company, I think I even implemented a check, and if the file or the folder is not there, I create it, because I think Falcon doesn't create it out of the box by himself. So unfortunately the waiting game is a bit unfortunate for us now, but yeah, we'll manage. So in the meantime, I can talk a bit more about what I wanted to go with now. So the idea is to store an open order in the DynamoDB, at the same time create a message in the message queue that is sent when the order has been created in DynamoDB. And then I want to have a Lambda function listen to this as a message queue and basically just change the order status. So obviously you would have some more business logic to it rather than just changing some fields in the database, but for the sake of the showcase, I kept it simple. And you don't want to see business logic, you want to see how you can connect services. And what I can do now in the meantime, while he's still spawning it, and I have to do some adjustments here, I can tell you something about the permissions that you have to set. Because some services need special permissions to be accessed even by other AWS services. And it's not always apparent what permissions are necessary. For example, Beanstalk can directly talk to a message queue like SQS, but by default it cannot talk to DynamoDB, which is because the DynamoDB is sort of public in the internet. You can reach it from everywhere if you wanted to. But the SQS is a completely AWS internal service. So I can quickly show this to you. Beanstalk is running with a certain role. There's some IAM settings here, which is basically some role management and user management in AWS. And there's one role which is called Elastic Beanstalk EC2 role, which is the role that the EC2 instance that runs on Elastic Beanstalk is using. And you can see that there's some policies attached here already, and I can just attach the DynamoDB full access role so that I don't have problems with permissions. There's also other things like like Lambda basic execution roles, so I can run Lambdas or full access or various things here. So it's very extensive, this system. You can also write your own policies or roles or users or whatever you want. So it's quite nice. But also quite complex, so you have to be a bit careful with this. And usually if your services can't talk to each other, most of the cases it's a policy issue that you have to solve. So that's a small pitfall that you have to take care of in case you want to have different services talk to each other. So let's now add the DynamoDB full access role to our Elastic Beanstalk, the policy to our Elastic Beanstalk role. And it should be here now. There you go. Sorry. Okay, what does Elastic Beanstalk do now? No. Okay, it's sort of green now. Still some part missing. It will now tell us again that the permission denied, exactly. You see here it's small already. Now I have to do the last change, which is hopefully last change, which is setting this again because I created it from scratch. This will hopefully not take that long. And then we should be able to see something on Beanstalk. So while he's doing it, I can already set up the queuing system, which is SQS. Oh, and by the way, if you want to try Elastic Beanstalk or any other service out on AWS, there is a free tier. I can show it to you quickly. And let's just quickly switch to English so that you can understand it. And it says that you can get 1 million requests per month on Lambda for free, 5 gigabytes in S3. RDS is relational database service, so you can run MySQL or Aurora, which is their own version of MySQL. It's compatible to MySQL. They say it's completely compatible, so you can. It's a drop-in replacement for it, and it's said to be 5 to 10 times faster. So if you have a slow application and the database is the bottleneck, maybe you should go with Aurora on AWS. There's a ton of other services that they have. I don't even know what QuickStart is. Like, I mean, seriously, just go here and, no, not here, here and have a look at all the services they have. They have services for data pipelines, for data streams, for image recognition, machine learning, Lex and Poly, which is text-to-speech and speech-to-text. Virtual private cloud, which is some sort of VPNs, more or less. Elasticache, which is Memcache and Redis. Elasticsearch as a service as well, which comes with the Kibana out of the box, like here. Oh, there's so many different services. I like every week there's a new service coming. So if you have a problem, they'll probably have a solution for you. So let's quickly check on our EC2, where you can see all the instances. And this is the instance that we used, and you still see the terminated ones, but I think he keeps them for, I don't know, 24 hours. You don't pay for them anymore. You could just, in case you accidentally stop the machine, you can just restart it from here, and it will just be as nothing happened. It's green, so please press your thumbs and hopefully it will work. Well, okay, so there's that. It doesn't. That's really unfortunate. I don't know why it doesn't work. It's really strange. What we can try now is we can put some try catch somewhere. Well, actually we do, I think. Yeah, we do. Get trace a string. Maybe this helps us a bit because I don't know what's going on right now with this. Really unfortunate that it doesn't work. Oops, wrong browser. Okay. I didn't say anything, so I'm just happy that it works. Okay, so finally we see our application running, which is good. So sorry for the inconvenience. It was not a Beanstalk issue, it was my own fault. Sorry for that. Okay, so now we can pick our orders or our pizza here, and I can place an order. And hopefully, if I press the place order button, it will go to the place order action, it will place the order in DynamoDB, store all the data there, and redirect us to the success page. Might not be working in the first iteration, but let's see what happens. Wow, it's just working. Awesome. Okay, now we can catch up speed a bit. So now I have an order ID, and hopefully I can find this in my DynamoDB. Let's go there. Let's go to tables. There's our table. Items. Well, actually, there's quite a bit because maybe from my test case. that I did on the weekend. But this should be our order ID. Let's just truncate the table just for good measure that you can see that it's really working and I'm not cheating on you. So let's just create a new order on Beanstalk. Let's pick this one this time. It's an order ID. And why is there two orders? Well, this is interesting. Where this comes from. This is really interesting. Yeah, probably because by default Beanstalk is like public for everybody. So maybe somebody like you guys found out that you can just access it. So, but this is a good case for you to see. Even better. I didn't expect that this will just work for you. This is now mind-blowing for me, but that's cool. Just go ahead. So now you can see that there is some orders being placed, and just go ahead and do it. And yeah, somebody's cheating on us, but it's all right. There's no validation here, and that's not I don't want to show validation here. So first step done. The second step is adding SQS. Let's go and start with SQS here. So we have our pizza service somewhere. Here we go. And now we also need SQS. Oops. Yeah. I think it's SQS client. Let me quickly check. Because they sometimes have some management services and some other ones. But yeah, it's SQS client. So again, we have to register it in our services. And I will probably not win the best prize for like clean code, but I guess it's enough for this showcase here. And again, it expects some configuration, which is basically the same as we have on DynamoDB, but they have a different, the same version scheme, but they might have a different version if you want to pinpoint it to a certain one. So for now we go for latest because of the showcase, but double check which version you should use. We also need to edit here. Hopefully DynamoDB SQS. And this is a much simpler API, I think. I think it's just telling him to store it there. Let's go ahead with the try catch again. Okay. Again, he expects some args, which is looking different now than with DynamoDB, obviously. There's, I think, two fields that you have to set, in which there's one which is called message body, which is obviously the message body. And there's also the queue URL. I might be able to set this queue URL in the configuration when I instance this service, create an instance of it, but for the sake of it, I will just do it here. By the way, now it's time for creating it. How many items did you create? You guys are really hungry, I guess. Okay, let's go to SQS. So it's really super easy. Just give it a name, standard queue, quick create, done. It can't get easier than this. And now we just need to drop it here. And we need a message body. Oops. And the message, whoops, basically only needs to contain the order ID, because all the other information the Lambda can get from the DynamoDB again. We could also add it here if we wanted to, but let's just have the DynamoDB as the single point of truth and be done with it. And as far as I know, you can put into the message body whatever you like. I think a string or JSON. I'm not sure how you do like a real JSON, so I'll just do something with JSON encode to be on the safe side. Okay. So technically this should now first store the item in the DynamoDB, then create a message in the message queue, and then we can start with our Lambda. So let's double check if everything's in place. So yeah, there's the SQS, it's set there, we have it here, it's constructed here, and it's called here. So let's EB deploy again. And by the way, on EB deploy, as soon as this is done, I can show you some things. You can have multiple environments, obviously. Let's go here. And you can see there's this terminated one, like there's pizza dev. There can also be pizza test, pizza stage, pizza prod, whatever. Pitfall, this name is globally unique. So if you have different applications, the environment name is not tied to this application name. So you cannot just call it dev test stage prod. We had to learn this the hard way. And it's a bit weird. I would expect that you can have a test environment in pizza and a test environment in, I don't know, some other service that you have, but unfortunately that's not possible. You have to give it a unique name across all applications that you have. So yeah, this is done. So hopefully, again, wrong browser. Bad habit. Pizza service should still be there. And if I now order something, it should not only appear in my, let's first go to the DynamoDB again to double check it. Yeah, so it should not only be here, but it should also be in our SQS. And there's a message available, which is awesome. There's a very simple view delete messages interface here. You can just poll for messages and stop again. And then you see that this is our message that we send with PHP. So you see how unbelievably simple it is to set up SQS. I'm not sure if you can talk to SQS by default from the outside. I guess you can configure it. If you have the proper headers or authentication set with some signing methods, they have the possibility to sign your requests to their service. But as we are in the whole AWS infrastructure anyways, we don't have to take care of that. Okay, so before we continue with the Lambda, I just quickly like to implement a simple order status page so that we can see that there's something happening in the background. So let's just go to the index controller, create a very simple status page. I hope you don't hear the rain outside because it's raining like hell outside right now. Welcome to summer in Germany. So we again need the pizza service. I could also inject it via a constructor maybe, but we don't need it every time. So, and also again, this is not a clean code challenge. So we are now lacking a method to get this data from the DynamoDB again. So let's implement it. Oh, and by the way, if you have questions, just go ahead and write them in the chat. So again, we have the DynamoDB that we have to use for this. So we'll just write a simple request for it. And now this time we don't store data, we query data. So there's a key that you can set. think there's also things like or in range of things, but for our case we just do by ID. And actually I'm not that proficient with DynamoDB yet, so bear with me if I can't answer your questions related to DynamoDB in detail. Sorry. So again, we want to query by order ID, and again we need to specify string, which is the ID. And next to the key, we again need to tell him which table to search in, which is again orders. So rather simple query to get something. It reminds me a bit of writing queries for Elasticsearch. If you're proficient with that, these queries get huge, like really huge for simple tasks. So I guess it will be kind of similar with DynamoDB, but still it's quite powerful. And it scales endlessly. So if you do too many requests, it will just scale with your application. Makes it more expensive, but if you have so many queries or requests on your database for pizza ordering, then you're probably in a good business anyway. So again, DynamoDB get item, easy as that, request, and this will get us an object or array. Now, I think it's an AWS result object with some stuff inside, but we only need some part of it. So we do something like result get item. That's basically what we want to have, the item itself. I can show you the request if you want. Let's see if we have everything in place. No, get order by order ID. And not finished yet, obviously, but it should show us what's inside the database. So let's just deploy this and see what happens. And as you can see, deploying an application update after all is said and done, like really just the code change, it's quite fast. It's fast enough. And everything I do here from CLI can also be done automatically. They have a code pipeline which you can set up, which just takes care of all this stuff. So if you push to their Git repository, they also have a hosted Git solution. You can configure to just deploy, run the application, build the application, whatever you like. Okay, so now we introduced order status action, and hopefully if I call it with this order ID, how did I call it? Order status. I should get some data here, so let's have a look at it. Ah, nice. Okay, so you see that it's a result object. This is the item I want to have, and you see that this is like the pizza ID. I can see this syntax of having the data type as the key and the value as the actual value. There's my session ID, all this stuff inside. There's some metadata like the status code, the URL of DynamoDB, and some other information. A question from the chat, which CI tool I use. We used to use Jenkins because we didn't have any maintenance for this anymore in our company. We switched to GitLab CI, so GitLab as our Git hoster, self-hosted actually, and GitLab CI, which is very similar to Travis CI from GitHub for our build and deploy pipeline. For this application or this new microservice-based application or stack that we write in the company, we don't have a set pipeline yet. We are setting this up right now with code pipeline from AWS, and it seems to work just fine. So you can probably just migrate your existing Git repositories to them. Thing is not that expensive. I think you pay by users, but it's like, I don't know, let it be $1 per user per month or something. So especially if you're a small company, it's very cheap. So yeah, this is our result. I only want to have the item, and I guess I have to convert it a bit to some like better structure. So let's get back to our pizza service. So we have our item here, which is already extracted from this big object I get back from Amazon or from DynamoDB. So let's just have a quick cleanup function here. Basically, the key is this n for a number or s for string, which I just don't need. Or actually, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Key is the field name, which is this one, and value is the array of like this, but I only want to have the number or the string or whatever, so I just do something like result key is reset value, just to get the value of it. Not value, it's not value. Oops. Okay, now I just need to call it and return it. Oh, and by the way, if I do this and there is no item, it will just return null for me. I don't have to do some magic changing or default values here. I can just check it if it's null and then do something, and otherwise just return it because it's implicitly set to null then. There we go. Okay, so next thing we have to assign it here, which we'll already do. It's good. Now what we need is a view for it. So let's call it, whoops, order status. Oh, do I still have the print r inside? Yeah, we don't want this. Who would ever commit or deploy print r? Nobody ever did before, right? Yeah, so very simple template. Let's again copy the header from here. Oops. Some simple volt magic. So that's basically our variable that we assign to the view. And we want to get the order, order ID. Like this, I think. Let's just copy this. And we also want to show the status of it, obviously, because we want to know how our pizza is doing. And that's just the status. And otherwise, we just tell the customer that unfortunately we lost his order. Yeah, we also need to assign the order ID in case we don't have this object here. So let's quickly do that as well. And technically this should give us the order status page. Let's deploy it and see what's happening. And there you go. There's our order ID, and there's the status open, which is basically just the status from the DynamoDB right now. So there's one piece left, and that's the Lambda function. What the Lambda function should do is it should listen to the message queue and process all the open orders that you guys and I created. And then basically just change the status of the order in the DynamoDB, just to show how to talk to DynamoDB in a different language. To be honest, I prepared this Lambda function already because I'm a PHP developer and not a Node.js developer. But yes, I wrote this code on my own, and we'll go through it completely, so I hope you don't mind. Before we can actually run this code, we need to create a Lambda function. And again, what Lambda is, it's serverless functions. So you put your code there, and it will be run by different triggers. You can configure the triggers. There's a lot of them. And it will run the code, give you a result, and then die again. It's gone. And so you pay not for 24/7 for your running servers, but you only pay for the usage of the Lambda function, for the invocations. And as I said, in the free tier, the first million per month is completely free for 1 year. And as a regular account, I think depending on the size of the Lambda, you can configure the size of it, so how powerful it is, how fast it can process your requests. I think the cheapest one is 3 million for free, and the most expensive one is like, I don't know, 128,000 for free, something like this. A question from the chat, if I have to write Lambda functions in Node.js. No, you can write them in different languages. Not in PHP, not sure if this will come in the future, but I can show you. So there's a lot of functions that we already created for some other stuff. Let's just create a function. I think they changed the interface a bit again. Anyways, we don't need a as you can see, they have some blueprints, but I think I don't want to have a blueprint. I just do from scratch because the code is prepared already. Now I can add a trigger, and here I can just do something like Alexa skills. You might know Alexa from Echo, Amazon Echo, CloudWatch events, CloudWatch logs, code commit. As you can see, there is no SQS here, and I don't know why. Maybe this will come. Usually what you might want to do is, instead of using SQS, in this case, you might want to go with SNS, which is Simple Notification Service. It's quite similar, but it's still different. So message queue obviously is like there's a queue and you have consumers on the queue. And SNS works a bit differently. It's some sort of a message bus where you can just subscribe to the topic and just do whatever you want with it. But SQS has obviously the behavior that if a message got rejected because you couldn't process it, because of a bug or whatever, it will be sent back to the queue. With SNS, this is not possible. It's like now or never. So that's why we went with SQS. Anyways, I can do this now. So there is, I think it's CloudWatch events. CloudWatch is their system for logging and everything and monitoring systems. You can also have dashboards there. And I think, oh, we already created one. Okay. Maybe I can just, I would like to show it to you from scratch. So you can have a rule name, just call it whatever you want. You can have a different schedule expression, like a pattern, so you can listen to different event types or subtypes, but you can also just do a schedule expression, so you can do cron syntax or rate syntax, and let's just go for rate. I think it's just like this. You can, unfortunately, not go below 1 minute. I think this is the minimum, so you cannot go into the seconds, unfortunately, but for our example, it's more than enough. Enable the trigger now. No, we don't want to enable it yet. We'll do this later. And I think we might need to do some additional stuff on Lambda. Next. And there you have it. That's your Lambda function. And here you can change the runtime. So you have different Node.js versions. You can run the Java if you want. I don't know why you would want to do this in Lambda, but whatever you could. There's Python. As I said, no PHP. Let's give it a name, which is like this. Yeah, it has a basic code editor inside. And yeah, now the role thing comes into play. And as you saw earlier, for Beanstalk, I had to attach the DynamoDB rule or policy. Now it's different. Now I have to, for whatever reason, I can't tell you why. This is something that you have to figure out yourself. Now Lambda can talk to DynamoDB out of the box, but it can't talk to SQS out of the box. So I think we have to do something like create custom role, maybe. Not sure. No, I think not. Existing one, no. From templates, maybe. Oh yeah, I think this is good. We need SQS polar permissions. I think this is the one that we need. So advanced settings, and here you can change the memory. So the minimum is 128 megabytes. You can go up to 1.5 gigabytes. Implicitly, he's also scaling the CPU, but for our example, this is more than enough. Yeah, there's a dead letter queue, no VPC, nothing necessary here. So let's just go ahead and create it. They have changed the interface since Sunday, so that's how fast they work with their stuff. Okay, there we go. So you see that the trigger is disabled for now. Let's just see what happens if I test it. Let's just run it. You can configure some dummy data here if you want. You see, okay, there's something in the chat saying that you have DynamoDB option in trigger select. Yes, you can. That's a cool thing. What you can do is you can, every time you store something in DynamoDB, you can invoke a Lambda function and let it react to it. And it will even get all the data from the DynamoDB directly, I think. So it's quite nice. You can attach a lot of services with AWS. So we don't need this data, but whatever. Let's go ahead. Okay. So there's hello from Lambda, because it's our code. Let's have a look at the function. Oops, there we go. So basically, he just executed this. There you go. You can also have a look at the logs if you want, CloudWatch. And there you go. So this is basically this CloudWatch thing I talked about earlier. Okay, now let's see how many orders we have. 14, that's cool. So what you can do now, guys, is you can go to the order status page and check your order if you want. And it should still be on open. But hopefully, if I paste my code inside and activate the trigger, which is run once per minute, your order status should change. Oh, and by the way, before we go quickly through the code, that makes sense. So first of all, we just define some variables here, which are coming from the process environment. This one is set automatically, and it's just necessary for setting up the service connection. Oh, and this is a good one. I have to set this one too. I have to set the task queue URL as an environment variable. I'll do this in a minute. Then you just require the AWS SDK. You do not have to, you can, but in this case you don't have to have node modules installed for this SDK. The Lambda functions just know the SDK out of the box. You don't have to do anything for that. Then what we do is we create the SQS and the DynamoDB. And here you see there's a document client and there's another class for management. So the SDK on Node.js is a bit different. Also, the configuration is a bit different because here we don't have to set the version for whatever reason. Anyways, what we do is export handler. This is like the entry point for the Lambda function. He will call handle SQS messages, which will receive the messages, which is basically just receive message on the SQS object, and he will just get us an array of messages. When this is done, I check if there are more than 0 elements inside. I for each them, and then I talk to my DynamoDB and do an update query, sort of. So key is order ID, which is the order ID. This body is basically the body from the message queue, which has been JSON parsed, yes. Because this body is, because we sent JSON to the SQS, we also have to parse it first so that we get an actual JSON object again. Now comes some even more weird stuff on DynamoDB. So this is our expression. Set some field to some value, and expression attribute names are hashtag or hash s is status, and values is introduced with this character and an s and done, because we want to update this status to done. You could technically, theoretically, also do something like this. But this is very similar to MySQL. This is a reserved keyword in DynamoDB. There's a list of them that are reserved. You can still use them for fields, that's fine, but if you want to use them in queries, you have to like sort of replace them like this. And basically this is similar to a prepare statement in MySQL, I guess. Very similar. We just want to get update new. So we update it with these params, and if everything goes all right, we have something in the console, and then, only then, we delete the message, because otherwise, if we couldn't process this order, we should not delete it, so that it gets back to the queue and we can try to process it later. And that's everything that you have to know about this Lambda function. There's not more to it. It's really just getting all the messages from the queue, and actually I think it's always in batches of 10. I could ramp this up, but for the sake of it, I'll just leave it. He will iterate over them. He will update them in the DynamoDB and takes the next message. And hopefully this will set all your pizza orders from open to done. So let's copy this over. There. Let's just hope that it will work out of the box. Yeah, before I can save it, I have to set the environment variable, because as I said earlier, it needs to know the queue, like here, task queue URL. So I have to tell him here with environment variables what the queue URL is, and I think I still have it in my PHP code. Yes, there we go. Hopefully we will not run into permission issues with Lambda, but it should work. So what I will do now is I will set this to 1 and save and tests, and then we should see some response that he could process an order. And if this is working, then I will set this to 10 and enable the trigger so it will run automatically every 1 minute. So let's see what happens. Okay, so this is all right. And here we see that he was not able to update the item, so there is a permission issue. So our process orders role is apparently not able to talk to DynamoDB. So let's check in IAM to see what's going on there. I thought that I set this permission, but apparently it was not correct. Okay. This is interesting. I thought that you set it up. Okay, let's check it. No worries. No, this was okay. Ah, this is the role. Lambda SQS. That was the name. Oops. It has the SQS polar. Oh, wait, sorry. I think I was mistaken. I think it has to have the DynamoDB as well. Sorry for that. So changing the policies or the roles usually takes just seconds, so hopefully it will work now. Let's see. Yes, there we go. So we updated an order with the ID like this. And let's check in DynamoDB. Refresh. And there should be one order that is set to done, so it's working. So let's just do the automatism here, which is triggers. And as you remember, I set a trigger already, which is triggering the Lambda every other minute, like once per minute. And it's interesting, it says state enabled here, but it's not enabled. Yes, let's enable it. Okay. So hopefully if I go to CloudWatch, I should be able to see something already in the logs. This might have been our manual test. I think it was. Yeah, it was. So let's just wait until 1 minute is over. Then you should, there you go. Oh yeah, I still have it set to once, like only one order. So let's just ramp this up a bit. Let's go to the function code again and set this to 10. Oops. And by the way, you can have multiple environments or aliases for your Lambda function. So you can, for example, say that you want to have, oh no, I did it by hand, whatever, doesn't matter. You can have something about test, stage, and prod environment, and you can link them, and you can always use the latest alias as well. I will not show this now because it would take too much time, but you can have different environments for your Lambdas. And now you should all see that your orders are changed to closed or done. I will now just create some more that you see that there's actually this cron running because I accidentally run it by hand with this 10 messages per minute. Okay, let's create one more. I'm very hungry today. So DynamoDB has some done, some open. That's cool. I'm not sure if I did a bug because I now have many more. So either you ordered a lot of pizza or I have a bug in my Lambda that creates new new items in the DynamoDB. Could happen. Let's check the code. But I think I have the order ID here, and I log it as well, so it should be fine. Does it even run? No, wait, let's check here. Oh yeah, he's rotating the logs quite fast, so you have to be careful when you check the logs. But yeah, he's doing something. So you can see that he's triggering it every other minute, like it's 5.3. There should be another one in a minute. There you go. Still waiting for the logs, but it should show something. And I hope that I don't create more. Just, you know, it's fine. There's still some open. Yeah, but you see that he's updating them automatically. I ordered many of them, that's cool. So yeah, so eventually, filter. Eventually these should all be set to done if you don't order anymore. Oh god, this interface is really weird. I don't know how to order here. Anyways, let's wait for 1 or 2 more runs. There's another one. So you can see that it's running automatically now every other minute. So you run it like 60 times per hour, which is basically nothing. As I said, this is now like an artificial trigger. You can also do something like either call the Lambda asynchronously from PHP. You can do that with all the stuff directly. Or you can do this the SNS way, where you just publish a message on the SNS bus and let Lambda listen to it. It will, I think, auto scale. So if there's 10 messages in the SNS, he will spawn 10 Lambda invocations at the same time. You can also, as somebody stated out in the chat, you can also hook the DynamoDB event to the Lambda directly. So every time you put something into DynamoDB, Lambda will be invoked. Also, this scales with the speed of inserting items in DynamoDB. So it's quite fast. So there's a lot of ways, and you have to figure it out on your own what you want to go. I usually try to have the chain as small as possible so that less elements in the chain can fail. But it's really up to you. Just make sure that it's fail-proof. Let's quickly check the code again. I was expecting that he would process more than what he's doing here. But let's check here. Yeah, I think he's only doing 3 per minute. I don't know why. Let's check in the queue maybe. Well, there's still 6 messages, okay. Yeah, so that's basically what I wanted to show. So what we learned today is that how to set up Elastic Beanstalk if you're smart enough to not delete folders that the framework needs before. I showed you how to connect to DynamoDB and for NoSQL storage and SQS for a message queue system. I showed you that you have to take care of permissions if you want to call different services in AWS. And I gave you a brief look at Lambda functions to have like real serverless functions running in the cloud, which are auto-scaling, and you can configure how fast they are and everything. So if you have some more questions, please put them in the chat. Let's just wait for one more run here. So there's this order, and should now be set to done. Yep, there we go. Question from the chat, what are Lambda functions good for, or what do we use them for? So there's a prime example for Lambda functions, which is image processing. In our use case in the company, we have raw images that are uploaded to an S3 bucket. As I said earlier, this sort of FTP server, if you so want, or data storage. And we want to slice them in different sizes, for example, for thumbnails or for gallery images or whatever you can think of. And what we do is every time somebody uploads an image, this triggers an event which invokes a Lambda function, which reads the configuration from S3 that tells the Lambda function what slices are needed for this image. It will slice the image with some Node.js library. I think it's called Spark. I think it's Spark. Or wasn't it Spark? I don't remember what it was called. There was, anyways. There's a Node.js library that you can use to process images. It's very similar to Imagic in PHP. And then the Lambda function slices them and stores them in different S3 bucket, which is then read by a CDN from Amazon to deliver these images to some page. That's what you can do. You can also, well, basically everything's like what you can imagine. Just make sure that it's not too heavy. I think there's a max timeout for Node.js invocations, like, I don't know, 30 seconds maybe or something. Not sure if you can set. Let's see if I can configure it somewhere. If there's a timeout. Yeah, there is. So I can even say minutes. Make sure that the memory is not too small, because if you are doing something CPU intensive, it might be that the invocation does not work. It will tell you that there's something broken, but this is something that you have to change maybe. Also, you could run a website serverless completely. Lambda itself has no HTTP interface, but there is something called API Gateway, which is some sort of HTTP/REST interface that you can configure on AWS. And you can enter some entry points, and you can add Lambda functions to it. So every time you call a web page, it will invoke a Lambda function, which just gives you the web page. The thing is that Lambda functions are not necessarily fast. Depending how warm they are, so they warm up the more often you call them, the faster they get. So we have some lambdas which give us some data from some database, and if they are cold, it takes like, I don't know, a second. And if they are warm, like pre-warmed up, they are like 100 milliseconds. So it's all right, but you have to take this into account if you want to work with Lambda. So you should probably not use them for critical parts of your website, for example, where the user has to wait for. You can do this for, like, I don't know, if you are loading the web page and then you want to like load some other data asynchronously into the website. Go with Lambda, that's fine, but do not deliver the initial website with it. Probably shouldn't do that, unless you have a CDN, which is taking care of the speed. So yeah, that's it from my side. If you don't have any more questions, I'd like to thank you everybody for listening. I hope it wasn't boring. I think the stream it's recorded, so it will end up on YouTube later. There's also an event next week, which is about 3D graphics with WebGL and in JavaScript on the same channel, I think. So if you are interested in that, just come here next week on this, I think at the same time even. Other than that, thank you and have a nice evening. Goodbye.